But first, let me start by introducing myself. I am Jeff Martin. I am the Director of Communications and Public Affairs at the American Anthropological Association. I am a white male with graying brown hair. Today, I am not wearing my black rimmed glasses, but I am wearing a white polo shirt, and I'm reporting to you from the AAA headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. Welcome to Game Changing Job Search Strategies as an Applied Anthropologist, a four-part webinar series hosted by AAA and designed especially for those whose jobs and job opportunities have been disrupted by COVID-19. The webinar series has been running throughout the month of July on Thursday, each successive Thursday. It started on July 9th with Get Hired, Showcase Your Unique Value, where we went over elevator pitches and developing your unique selling proposition. Last week, we held Secrets for Building Networks That Lead to Jobs. And next week, part 4, the final of our series, we'll be holding Facing the Interview Squad, Strategies That Impress. But for right now, welcome today. This is Not Your Parents' Resume, New Ways to Tell Your Story. Again, I also want to add that while on successive Thursdays and for next week as well, the webinar started at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So let's get started. You can visit our website, and again, as I mentioned, specifically the webinars page, and we're going to put that up on the chat room right now, the URL to that, to get more information on all of our webinars. But back to this webinar. To make this more accessible to everyone, we'll be providing closed captioning. What you'll need to do is, for those of you who are new to Zoom, take your cursor and go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you'll see icons, and you should see the closed captioning icon. Click on that, and closed captioning will appear. Presenters will be providing visual descriptions of themselves in the slides they'll be going over. And I do want to remind the presenters to please announce themselves before they speak. Also, a reminder to all of you out there, please turn off your video and microphones unless you are speaking. This is to help us, give us all better access. We know your dogs are cute. We love your dogs, but we don't need them barking their views on resume building. If you have questions, again, there's a chat room. And if you take your icon and go to the, your cursor and go to the icons at the bottom of your Zoom screen, not only closed captioning, but you'll see an icon for the chat room. If you click on that, it'll appear, I believe, to the right of your screen. And that is where you can post your questions. To help us out, please start by putting question in quotation marks and then asking the questions. It helps us to see the difference between regular chat and the questions. I also want to encourage everyone in the webinar to go ahead and get into the chat room and become a part of it. I love it when someone asks a question and it's not even our presenters, it's another attendee that types in, I had the same problem, check out this URL, or here's a resource that I found helpful. It's just helpful for all of us to use the chat room. We are now going to present a poll for our attendees, just so we can get a better sense of who you are and what you're looking for. I always say this, I know we're anthropologists, but don't overanalyze this. I think it's just a set of 3 questions, again, to give us a better picture of who you are and what you're looking for. So that'll be posted right now. Lastly, as I mentioned, go to our website, AAA website, and again, the link is up there in the chat room, to our webinars page. This is where we're going to be posting all of the webinar recordings, the PowerPoint slides, the chats, and the questions, as well as the answers will be posted up there. If not later this week, it's already at the end of the week, then the beginning of next week, we'll have that up there. Without any more ado, here's Elizabeth Briody.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Briody, a white woman with eyeglasses and short hair. Today I'm wearing a blue top. I'm in my alcove, which is a little space in my house with a window. Next slide, please. Today's webinar is the 3rd in a series of 4 career webinars for this July, and it's called This Is Not Your Parents' Resume, New Ways to Tell Your Story. It's a terrific webinar, thanks to our presenters and to the American Anthropological Association and its 10,000 members. We hope that this webinar and the other 3 in the series, along with the career resources associated with them, will be useful to you and to others that you know. I'd like to thank my 2 partners, Dawn Lehman and Joe Aiken, who have worked with me to organize the 4 webinars. And I also want to acknowledge particular members of the AAA staff who have been tireless in their support. And they include Ed Lebo, Jeff Martin, Scott Hall, Sean Eiffel, Gabby Dunkley, Nell, and Daniel Ginsberg. And I now want to introduce Dawn Lehman, who is leading today's webinar. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. I'm Dawn Lehman, a white woman with brown eyeglasses and medium-length blonde hair. Today, I'm wearing a black top, and I'm sitting at my desk near a window in my home office. Next slide, please. As a cultural anthropologist, I have spent most of my career conducting research, developing volunteer programming, and supporting the work of healthcare professionals. I'm the co-founder of a 25-year-old youth volunteer organization called Kids Corps USA. Today, we're excited to share information and tips to help you develop a resume that will catch recruiters' attention. Joe, Molly, Adam, and Elizabeth will talk about types of resumes, and Ingrid will talk about ways to get your resume past tracking systems and into recruiters' hands. Then, the presenters will answer some questions in a Q&A, and we will conclude the webinar with final remarks by Elizabeth Briody. Next slide, please.
Hold on,
in this
Dawn.
webinar,
Hold on, Dawn. Gabby, can you move the slide up? Okay, go ahead, Dawn.
In this webinar, our goal is to help you develop resumes that will catch recruiters' attention and get you to the next step, the interview. Next slide, please. To increase your chances of getting an interview.
Dawn, hold on. Gabby, back up 1 slide, please. Sorry for the difficulties. Okay, this is the create the appropriate cover letter, Dawn.
Yes. To increase your chances of getting an interview, create the appropriate resume for your intended audience. In the past, job applicants often used the same resume for all their job applications. The main change applicants made at that time was their career objective. Today, one size does not fit all. As you will see in this webinar, resumes vary depending on your field and type of organization you want to work for. Our presenters will talk about structured online resumes for government jobs, unstructured online resumes through job boards, resumes with portfolios, condensed CVs, and one-page consultant summaries and bios. Next slide, please. One of the reasons job applicants get rejected early on is the applicant does not pay close attention. That is, they don't decode the job ad. It's important to read the posting carefully. Check the type of submission required, for example, online, email, file type, and word limit. If basic requirements are not followed, your resume may not reach the recruiter. The Adobe PDF format for resumes or cover letters is not recommended at this time because most recruiters and HR professionals want to import the text of your resume into their electronic database or applicant tracking system for future keyword searches. Those programs deal much easier with Microsoft Word documents and often cannot properly read or import all the characters and text from a PDF. Ingrid will talk more about how the applicant tracking system works later in this webinar. It's important to determine key words in a specific job ad and identify what words continuously show up in these ads. Create a Wordle cloud that will show you important words you can use in your cover letter and resume. You can paste job descriptions into Wordle, and it immediately generates a cloud that visually represents how often words appear. Go to wordle.net and try it out. Next slide, please. This is a visual example of a Wordle cloud. It looks like a cloud with a lot of words in it. Frequently used words are shown larger than others. After webinar 2, Dr. Jennifer Barr, who currently is looking for the right job, decided to decode 5 job ads. She entered the job descriptions into Wordle to identify words recruiters in the public health and medical space often use. She said it helped her spot the trends in kinds of jobs she was gravitating to, and she said she's going to leverage some of the keywords in future searches on job boards. Next slide, please. There are other ways to decode the job ad. Study the company website, their mission, vision, and values. Sometimes companies don't articulate job requirements well, and a specific skill set is not explicitly communicated. You may be a better fit than you think. If applicable, use some of the keywords on the company website in your cover letter and/or resume. It shows you did your homework before applying for a position with this company. Check the employment section on the company website for the job posting. Does it match what is written on other job boards? Some job boards, like Indeed.com, pull information from other sites. And sometimes what they post, for example, submission deadlines, are inaccurate. So always check the company's website postings to make sure you have all the accurate information for the specific position you want to apply for. Also, if possible, send your resume directly through the company website because it will go through their portal faster. Next slide, please. In the past, applicants focused on listing types of responsibilities. Today, we must connect the dots for companies that look for more outcomes-based information. Pay attention to dollars. How did you save dollars, grow dollars, or optimize dollars? Pay attention to percentages. How did you increase or decrease? Pay attention to absolute numbers. How many did you create, add, or serve? For example, instead of saying you were responsible for contributing to sales growth, say you increased revenues by 20% through insight research that led to the development of 3 innovative products taken to market this year. Yes, that's a mouthful, but that's what they want to hear. Next slide, please. If you have no experience with companies outside academia, you can still show recruiters you are outcome-oriented. Provide metrics based on your experience. Did your pilot research lead to a larger study involving more people? Was a project you worked on as an assistant scaled up, and you now are responsible for managing others? How many people read and cited your paper? How many responses did you get from your LinkedIn blog? How did your internship help the organization increase its capacity to help others? How many people did you serve as a volunteer, and how did it make a difference? Keep track of metrics in all you do, even when you're still in grad school. It may come in handy when you create a resume for your ideal job. Next slide, please. Many job seekers have asked whether or not it's worthwhile including a cover letter with their resume when they apply to a job posting. Recruiters and HR professionals are all over the map in their responses. According to Michael Spiro, Director of Recruiting at Experis Finance, you can catch recruiters' attention with a T cover letter. The name derives from the look of the page itself. You will find his full description of a T letter and formatting examples in the Webinar 3 references after this webinar. The opening paragraph in a T letter is a brief introduction of who you are and what position you are interested in. Then you say something like, below is a comparison of your job requirements and my qualifications. For the middle section of the letter, which I will show you in more detail on the next slide, you visually show how your knowledge, skills, and experience match their requirements. In the closing paragraph, you explain why you are a good fit for the position. Next slide, please. The T letter provides pertinent information that the recruiter can read in 15 seconds or less. You're showing them right up front that you are qualified for the position. This is how you do it. Create a vertical line under the first paragraph to divide the page into 2 equal spaces. The column on the left is labeled Job Requirements. The column on the right is labeled My Qualifications. You then fill in each column with the appropriate matching information. If there are requirements you don't completely match, the T letter gives you an opportunity to succinctly show that you have similar knowledge and skills you can apply in the job. Next slide, please. I would now like to introduce Joe Aiken, who will talk about resumes for government jobs.
Hi everyone, I'm Joe Aiken, a woman with shoulder-length dark hair, and I'm sitting in my home office / art studio. There's a window behind me and art pieces hanging on the white wall above. Next slide. As Dawn said, I'm going to share some tips for resumes for U.S. government jobs. These will also include some kind of general tips for navigating online systems. And just so you know that I do have currently I have a postdoc position at University College London, but I am very much an applied anthropologist, and I've been working in organizational and design anthropology. But I also have over 15 years of experience in HR. So I've been a hiring manager, and then most recently I've been an internal executive coach for CEO level government professionals. Next slide. So why even mention a federal resume, and what is it different versus a private sector resume? A federal resume is typically multiple pages and includes a detailed description of your work experience, compared to a private sector resume, which is typically only 2 pages and provides a brief synopsis of your work history. And I have a little screenshot of the first page of a federal resume. Don't worry, it's not for anybody to ever be able to read. It's just to kind of highlight the differences, and there are actual visible differences between a federal and a private sector resume. It's not cute, it's not pretty, it's not designerly. It's all in the same font. It looks pretty boring. And most importantly, it's written in prose or in paragraph form. You don't see any bullet points. Next slide. So in the US, you would build your federal resume through the USA Jobs process. USA Jobs is the US government's official system for federal jobs and employment opportunities. It's an online applicant tracking system that the federal government uses to kind of build your resume. It's also very similar in the UK, even though it's not exactly the same system. Some of these tips would be just as useful. And since I only have a couple of minutes to go over some highlights today, I want to draw your attention to a USA Jobs resume tips resource that we're putting up under webinar 4 on the AAA's website, because I've included some step-by-step instructions and tips. I also noticed someone in the chat posted a very useful link to USA Jobs, because they also put out workshops that are free to the public, so you can get some extra tips there. But for now, I'm going to give you some tips from an HR insider. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. Oh wait, go back one. Okay, just so some general tips for surviving USA Jobs, and also for similar online systems such as like Resumix. You're going to hear much more about applicant tracking systems later on from Ingrid, but these are just kind of my top things to know. First of all, just realize that many organizations transfer information from one online platform to another resume system. So for USA Jobs, there's many agencies who use that USA Jobs to collect all the information, but then it's transferred to their own internal system. And for this reason, I always tell people to use bullets with caution, or even not at all. And I know this is contrary to what you're normally told for resumes. You want it to be nice and pretty with bullet points. But just for the simple fact that these systems are not perfect, a lot of the times, even with a hard return, the bullet points don't transfer very well. And so it can make it very difficult for a hiring manager to read. That's the last thing you want to do to them. The second tip I would say to be mindful of is to use keywords from the job description. This means using keywords, key phrases word for word, but this does not mean that you should copy and paste the job description into your resume. In fact, do not do that. The system will actually look at your resume and it will compare it to the job description as well as other applicants, and it can be flagged for plagiarism. So just keep that in mind. You definitely want to use keywords, but do not copy and paste entire sentences or entire paragraphs. And by all means, use the entire word or character space given. This not only gives you time to explain and give that detailed experience that they're looking for in a federal resume, but it also shows the hiring manager that you took your time and that you want this job because you took the time to fill out the entire space given. So that's my top tips. Next slide. So now I want to turn it over to my friend and colleague, the amazing Molly Rempe.
Hello, everyone. My name is Molly Rempe. I'm a white woman with long reddish brown hair. Today I'm wearing a gray top and I'm sitting in a room with blue wall paint. Just for my background, I've been a user experience or UX researcher for over 5 years. I've worked on both hardware and software product development teams. For those unfamiliar with the field, UX researchers help teams answer 2 questions. Are we building the right thing? As in, who are our users? What are their pain points? How can we make their lives better? And are we building the thing right? How we optimized this design to make the experience useful, usable, and desirable. So that is my role as a UX researcher. And I'm here today because in addition to my core roles as a UX researcher, I spend a lot of time reviewing application materials to help grow my team. So I've also noticed that the social science applicants in general and anthropologists with advanced degrees in particular anecdotally submit weaker materials on average, at least in my UX experience. So I strongly believe we need stronger applications if we as a field are going to be successful in industry, specifically the UX industry. I can't cover everything today, but I hope to share just a few quick tips to get started for this group. Next slide, please. So to do this, what I'd like to challenge us to do, can you go back one? Yes, perfect, thank you so much. To do this, I'd like to challenge us all to be UX researchers for just a little bit. I want us to think in terms of our hiring managers. What does their typical day look like? What are their goals? What are their pain points? And how can we build our application materials to reflect these factors? So for example, hiring managers are reading hundreds of resumes, and they're often for multiple positions. They want well-designed, scannable content that leads them to the most important information. And I did see on the chat that somebody had pointed out, hey, this is very different than government resumes, and it's very different than the T-Love letter. And this is kind of following into this argument that we need to think about the user, kind of the EMIC point of view of who's hiring us. I'm personally a firm believer in a one-page resume, but I also have less than 8 years of experience. So if you have significant experience, or even if a one-page resume is a challenge for you, that's okay. Many disagree with my one-page rule, but perhaps experiment with a one-page resume for you. What would fit on that one page and what spills over, just as an exercise to see what's the best information to include. I also want to remind everyone that your hiring manager, sometimes me, isn't going to hire you based on your resume. So the takeaway here is they want to be confident enough in you as a candidate to pass you along to the rest of the team. So your resume is almost like a business card or an elevator speech, as was kind of brought up in one of our past webinars at the AAA. So think of a resume as a challenge to share the right information well enough to persuade someone to give you 5 more minutes. So these are some of the ways that we can kind of think about our hiring manager as we create our application materials. Next slide, please. We could talk about this for a long time, but I've just highlighted 4 points to kind of think about as we move forward. Again, in the tech industry, these might not apply directly to your field. I suggest using color as an accent to add interest and potentially personality. It helps kind of, you see a lot of zebra black and white resumes out there, and adding color kind of draws the attention a little bit more. Having said that, I think it's also important to include white space to increase readability. Using white space strategically to help your hiring manager focus on the most important information and guide their eyes throughout the page, or pages if that is your style. I also suggest using columns and text boxes to draw attention, containers if you will. So instead of using the default resume template on Word where you read top to bottom, left to right, perhaps use columns or text boxes to help guide and create space between different pieces of information. I'm also a firm believer that if we're trying to do 11 point, 10 point, 9 point font, we're not being concise enough in our words. And so you can technically get a 2-page resume into a 1-page resume by decreasing your font size, but I suggest we move away from that. These are just 4 tips to explore more. I definitely encourage everyone to check out the AAA and NAPA's career development pages. Next slide. Excellent. So I've taken a screenshot of one of my resumes I've used in the past with some personal information redacted. You'll see on the screen that it is a 1-page resume with 2 columns. I'll start on the right-hand side to describe what's on the right-hand side first, and then we'll move to the left. So at the top right-hand side, we have my name, my title, a user experience researcher, and my contact information, city, state, phone number, and email. And then I have my current career goals listed out in prose format. Here it says I'm an applied anthropologist with 5 years of experience in agile software, firmware, and hardware development. I'm seeking roles in UX research, UX management, product ownership, and product management. As you can see, I kind of had a broad net of roles I was looking for, but I wanted to explicitly call those out for individuals, for hiring managers looking at my resume, so they could understand what types of roles I was looking for. Below that, you can see my experience. There are 2 companies I worked for there and 4 roles highlighted with the impacts below each of those. On the left-hand side, it's a gray column. At the top left, there's a portion for my education where I showcase my master's and my bachelor's. Below that, there's a section with my skills where I list out all the methodologies and tools or technologies that I've used and feel comfortable talking about. And I use this as a way for my hiring manager to quickly understand what I can easily speak to in an interview. And below, on the bottom left, there are selected projects. There are 4 selected projects here, and I wanted to highlight that 3 of these are actually from my graduate school experience. So they were class projects that I wanted to highlight because I'm proud of them and I can easily speak to the impact that I made even though they were a class project. So this is just one example of a resume. It's certainly not the best. I've included additional examples in our webinar resources page, and we'll see some additional examples later on in this presentation. But as a recap, use color, appreciate white space, create containers or using text boxes and columns, and 12-point font is small enough, I believe. But just a few extra minutes. Next slide, please. I'd like to talk about portfolios. So some of us might say, hey, 1 page is still not enough, and that's okay. My second point is that we can use a portfolio to supplement our resume to tell our story. Because research portfolios are, for all intents and purposes, a collection of short stories. If you think about it, each story starts with a problem or a crisis. So for UX research, it's a stakeholder need and a group of core research questions. Then there's a rising action, like the methodology, the recruitment strategy, the tooling we use. We might talk about complications, the bumps in our research projects always run into. A climax, kind of what we learned. And then a falling action. Here's how we saved the world, or kind of what's the impact that this organization or this team took away. As a hiring manager, I've never said no to a research candidate because they don't have a portfolio. but I have been able to be much more confident in candidates that have given me a portfolio because I can understand the way they think about their research problems. Next slide, please. So just like the resume, I've highlighted 4 tips for building a portfolio. These are just my opinions, but they've served me well. One is wait to pay for a portfolio site. I strongly believe we can do a lot for free. There are some beautiful portfolios out there in the world, and I am not a designer, and I made the decision that I don't need to pay for a monthly website to make those happen. So honestly, mine's a Google slide deck that I give to potential employers on an as-needs basis. I also think it's important to start small. We see all of these, as I said, very beautiful portfolios that have 10, 15 different case studies, and it's totally okay to start with 2. And just see, on a weekend when you're not working, see what you can do to work on that storytelling arc and see if you can make it concise and readable. I also believe that we don't need to design unless we enjoy it. I'm not a designer. I don't identify as one, and I'm not very good at it. So I'm totally okay adding some black and white bullet points and having a white background. That's just my style. If you love designing and you really like the nitty-gritty of it, definitely do it. But don't feel like your portfolio needs to have that design aspect to it, because that's not why our employers are hiring us. They're hiring us for our research skills. And finally, focus on telling those concise stories. Much like a resume, portfolios should be short, sweet, and scannable, but you can just add more case studies to them to kind of expand your experience story. Next slide, please. So really quick, my portfolio is a Google slide deck, as I said. I used a pre-made template using Google Slides. My portfolio is 9 slides. It includes 4 slides about me and my research approach, 1 slide about methods, and 4 case studies, 1 study per slide. My portfolio is not fancy, but it has been effective. And I've also included examples of some really wonderful portfolios that are a step above mine on the AAA career website, career webinar resources page. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of one of my case studies that is in my portfolio. I want to highlight that this is a class project. It's one of those selected projects that you saw on the bottom left of my resume. And it's one slide that is 2 columns. On the left-hand side, we have a title of the case study. What is the meaning of driving? Then I have just a few sentences to explain what our core research question was. And then an anonymized picture from my study to kind of draw visual interest. On the right-hand side, I have a review of my research methods in bulleted points, a review of my role in the team in prose format, a few sentences covering what I delivered to my client, and ending with an explanation of my impact also in prose format. And again, this was a class project. I wasn't getting paid for it, and it was a 3-month project. So remember that there's storytelling here. I tried to be concise. This could have been, 16 slides, but I tried to keep it in a scannable format. It's important to anonymize when you use pictures. I just wanted to highlight that. And again, a hiring manager could scan, understand this, and if they're interested, they could ask me questions during the interview process to see if they wanted to learn more. I'm open for questions at the end of this presentation, but for now, I'd like to pass it on to Adam.
All right, hey, can folks hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, cool, okay. Well, hey everybody, my name is Adam Gamwell, and I am a design anthropologist, I suppose by training at this point, but I have taken a rather meandering career path. But to tell you who I am real quick, I am a white male with a shaved head. I have nice earplugs, which you can kind of see, but maybe not because I'm wearing earbuds with them. And I'm in my home office where I work. And I have a window too, just like y'all, which is nice to have. And so a bit about me is that as I said, I've kind of taken a meandering career path to figuring out what it is I want to do in life. And I'll probably still be figuring this out when I'm 80. But this has led me to really spend a lot of time figuring out how to describe work experiences and what counts as experience, and to think about career development and like how do we talk about these pieces. So just to give you a bit of an example, like I've worked in higher ed administration as an adjunct professor, in media production, which I created this AnthroLife podcast. I've worked as a design researcher, started my own business as a consultant and researcher, and I currently work as a market innovation researcher and a podcaster. So I don't have a straightforward career path. You don't have to have one either. But again, what this means is that I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and even to kind of tag into what Molly and Dawn and Elizabeth have been saying too, that there's multiple ways up the mountain, as it were. And so we'll dig into it, thinking about this, about what is a CV and a resume and how these two different documents can work together. So next slide, please. So this slide says, what is a CV? And a CV, if anybody is in academia or has taken graduate level classes, you have probably heard of this. If not, that's also totally fine. But a CV stands for curriculum vitae. And essentially this is what we call an achievement document that grows with your career. And it basically describes all your different experiences, the kinds of education that you've gotten, the achievements, which could be things like publications, could be grants, could be projects you've worked on with teams or by yourself, could be honors if you get certain honors for grades or your different work, presentations and talks you've given in conferences or workshops, for example, and then positions held that could again be within academia and outside. What's really quite interesting in this space is that CVs are used primarily for academia. However, in my research, I found that if you're an American citizen looking to work elsewhere, sometimes a CV is used to get a job overseas. And so I'm not sure if that is the case, for Canadians or citizens of the UK also. But this is something just to note: the CV may actually come in handy if you're looking to work abroad. One other piece with this is that unlike a resume, you don't modify a CV. So the idea about this is a CV is kind of an additive document that you add to it as you get new experiences and new accolades, honors, publications, etc. And it doesn't change when you apply for jobs. Your CV is just this kind of laundry list, as it were. Next slide, please. So this on the slide is an example of my CV, and I'll talk a bit about what is on this. So this is also not a overly designed document. It is primarily one column of text that's split up in a few different sections. It has my name at the top. It says curriculum vitae, and then my name below that, as well as the dates, just so we know relatively, June 2020, how up to date the document is. Similar to a resume, it has the city where I live, my phone number, my email, and links to LinkedIn, Twitter, website, if you have any pertinent links like that you'd like people to know about. Then the first three sections that make up this first page include education, career experience, and leadership roles. And so education, you can put both academic degrees, such I have my PhD from Brandeis University in anthropology, and the title of my thesis, Designing the Future of Food, Quinoa Agrobiodiversity in the 21st Century Highland Peru, as well as the year 2018. But I also have non-traditional education. I took a user experience design boot camp between last year and this year from a company called Springboard. So I have above my Brandeis education Springboard, user experience research and design bootcamp online, 2019, 2020. So you can put all kinds of education that you get here because it all counts as learning, right? Below this, I have the career experience section. And again, each of these has a header, I should say. So it says education, then below that is the education. This is career experience. And so just the first example we have, it says Missing Link Studios. Then it has Somerville, Massachusetts, where I do my work or where I live. And then the year 2018 to present, as well as then a URL that goes to the website for Missing Link Studios. And then it has my job title and then really what I do at the company. So this is 2 lines, and it just says co-founder, principal researcher, and digital producer of a storytelling and design research consultancy specializing in social impact media production, communication strategy, and innovation. So they're actually fairly short. They're maybe 2 or 3 lines of these career experience blocks. And then below the career experiences, I have key leadership roles. And so this is where you might put things like teaching. So whether or not you have worked inside or outside the academy, this is a great spot to put that. So I have as my top key leadership role, adjunct faculty, teaching products and marketing, for example, at an engineering school here in Boston, as well as I have other faculty fellow or adjunct positions below that. So if you have teaching experience, this is one place to put it. On the left side of this slide, I have listed all of the categories that I have on my CV. You don't have to have all of these, but this is just to let you kind of give a sampling. Besides, education, career experience, and leadership roles, we have things like publications if you have those. And again, it's okay if not. I mean, if you're an early career scholar or working in industry, you may or may not have what you call a publication. But again, publication is kind of a flexible term. I actually learned from Elizabeth Briody about this and like thinking about how do we categorize these pieces. So we have below publications, conference presentations. So if you've given a talk anywhere at AAA, for example, you can put that there. Workshops and public talks are a bit different, that you do them outside of a conference. Blogs and reports. So if you've written anything on medium.com, for example, I know a lot of us do. Or if you've just written for Anthrodendum or any other anthropology blog too, you can put those here. Grants and awards. Additional teaching experience. So this is if you have teaching assistantships, if you are a TA or a CA or a T, your university might call them, you could put that here. As well as you might think about that, depending on if you have not taught before, but you have teaching assistantship experience, that's something you could bring up to kind of talk about as a leadership role working with students, because you're kind of working in conversation with the professor of the class. Then below that, I have community and volunteer experience, and then languages spoken. And then for me, this may be unique to me or other people that work in media, I have media production credits. So this is different shows and podcast episodes that I have produced. Next slide, please. So this slide says CV to resume, ? Capture your transferable skills. So this is one of the big pieces. So I had a CV first. And the idea about how do you get to a resume is that obviously job seekers and hiring managers, as we've already been talking about so far, may have different kinds of vocabulary, different ways they speak about what they're looking for. And so one of the ways to do this, if you're not sure how your academic experience applies or just different class projects you've done. Even Molly had a great example of how your portfolio can be a class project. One way to think about this also is what are the transferable skills? These are kind of like the broader categories of kind of work that you've done. So for example, if you are a social scientist, you have likely done research of some kind, whether it's for a report or you've gone into the field. And so research itself is broadly applicable in fields like user experience and some other ones that we'll look at a little bit below. And so think about what is the kind of research that you've done. Is it qualitative? Is it quantitative? Have you done demographics? Like thinking about what are the qualities of the research that you've done. Another category could be communication. If you've done any writing, whether for conferences, writing a paper, had a publication. If you've done public speaking itself, that could be within classrooms or in a public setting. If you have done any work, helping do a web design or social media for an organization, a club, these count too as communication skills. Another category could be design. If you've done any web design or visual design, if you've made posters for an event, if you've done content design, and I do want to highlight content design here. Writing is user experience. We think about user experience as a design thing, and it is, but writing is a massive part. Think about how you access a website by how it looks, but also what it says. So the capacity to write and content is super important to think about as a skill. You may think about things like project management, such as if you've organized a panel at a conference. If you've worked on a team and worked, as a team leader or just kind of helped rally people together, as well as problem solving, right? Project management is problem solving. This is an incredibly valuable skill for businesses. Entrepreneurship is another way of thinking about thought leadership, grant writing. If you've gone for any grants, gone for any money, you can think about this in the category of entrepreneurship. How are you getting funding for your work? These also speak to some of the idea of numbers that Don was mentioning before. As well as another category can be information management. If you've done teaching, if you've done training programs, if you've been writing, you can think about these different categories. So the idea about this is, look back at your CV if you have one. If not, you can begin to create one and kind of think about the idea of just listing what you've done and then what kind of categories of experience might these fit into. Next slide, please. So this is an example of one of my resumes I've used in the past too. And so this is, I went from the CV that I had before and I over time transferred it into this resume. This is a one-page resume. And so this is, basically what we have on the document. I've got two columns. There's probably 2/3 on the left side and 1/3 on the right side. And the right side is a little bit darker gray, just to get a little bit of contrast for helping see the differences. On this resume, basically the features that would be different from a CV. Again, if we remember, a CV is listing work experience, key leadership roles, education. On this resume, similar to Molly's, at the top it says about, and I have a summary of basically some work experience that I've done. And so what my summary says is, in one sentence, a design and experience researcher with a social science and media design background. Then I have a small paragraph that's talking about kind of a summary of my work. And I say, I use social science methods to help people and organizations uncover and diagnose non-obvious challenges and to design and deliver human-centered solutions with lasting impact. My work is animated by a commitment to rigor, inclusion, collaboration, human-centered problem solving, and enhancing people's experiences and lives. So part of this, if I want to highlight this, I'm not saying the work that I've done before. I'm saying this is how I approach my work. So this is one way to think about it. If you don't have a ton of experience, you can help put your philosophy into more actionable terms so that when someone reads it, they understand what it is that you're about, right? And that's kind of the strategy here. So below this summary section, I have core skills. I won't read all these, but I will make these, this will be available later. But thinking about this, so I said my core skills are qualitative research, design, project management, digital production, and technical skills. This is like working with audio production software, Adobe Creative Suite, for example. And so again, think about these are the broad categories of open research. And so next to each of these core skills I have, then I've listed some things that I've done. For example, in the qualitative research, I said 6+ years of PhD level researcher. You don't have to have that number, but just saying this is the kind of research that I've done. And then I say I've done project planning, organization, ethnography, consulting, embedded fieldwork, etc. So just kind of picking a core category and then spelling out some of the stuff that I've done in these spaces. And then on the right side of my resume, I have my education, one line, springboard, user experience, design, career track. That's it. Brandeis University, PhD, and my thesis title. Below that, I have a career history that's it's a little bit shorter than the CV one. It just says, for example, 2017 to present. The next to that says Lesley University, Emerson College. These are universities that I've taught at as an adjunct. And then just says adjunct professor of design, civic media, and entrepreneurship. So very quick, nothing about it. The idea, again, is just to have kind of open the door of saying, here's the things I've done. These are conversational points. Then at the bottom of the right side of my resume, I have 4 links to a section I call thought leadership. This is writing. These are just blog posts or publications that I've done. So this, again, just is another invitation to let someone know about the kind of work that I have done. So this may be a non-traditional approach, but this is just, again, rethinking how do we take the ideas that may not sound like job experience, quote unquote, but then we can actually rethink about them in a way that can be, I think, quite helpful. Next slide, please. So this is an important question. You may be saying, okay, what skills should I highlight? And so that's the question on this slide. Right, and this is something that I struggled with for a long time. How do I know what skills are most important? And so 2 answers to this is, get to know a target industry that you're interested in, whether that is research, market research, or consumer research, or user experience, or design, or education. Get to know the target industry by looking at publications. Again, Medium is a wonderful website that you can both read and listen to articles that people have written in the different fields. And then see how are they describing the pertinent skills, roles, and qualities, right? And this, I say, is in conversation with looking at job postings, right? Look at, user experience researcher job postings. And then also, again, supplement this by looking at articles, again, on Medium or some kind of similar site that's a public blog. And then just another point, be a social scientist and learn the local language, right? That's just one of the things. If you're a social scientist, we're a little bit at least aware of this. This is a great time to practice how are the people that I want to communicate with communicating, and then how do I talk in a way they're going to understand. Next slide, please. So one thing I wanted to highlight too is that this slide says examples of industries and companies where you would highlight different skills. And so similar to going from a CV to a resume is going to change based on the job that you're applying for, the industry. And so, I mean, if you apply to 3 user experience research jobs, your resume will be similar. But if you're applying to a market research position and a business consulting position and a communications position, the resume will look a little bit different. So what I want to highlight here are 5 different industries where you might find anthropological or social science or human science skills to be widely applicable. So one is called research, and this could be government, like Joe was talking about, consumer research, innovation research. There are, in fact, anthropology-grounded research firms, which they exist, which is super exciting. Some of them are motive-based, which is one of the places that I currently work. There's Kresninger Research and Insights, LTG Associates. These are all founded by anthropologists and explicitly use anthropological methods as their research. So they do exist, which is super cool. You may see marketing and advertising organizations too. Team One in Los Angeles is an example of this. They have a cultural anthropologist as one of the head people in their advertising team. Business consulting is another category. For example, the Boston Consulting Group, which is actually a global group. It's not just in Boston. Simon & Associates, this is also an anthropological research group that works with basically the C-suite and corporate level, C-suite being like CEOs and the high-level leadership suites. And Forrester, as well as, we might know Dr. Briody's group, Cultural Keys also. Another category would be design research, companies like IDEO and Frog, and communication and media, such as PRX, your local NPR station, or the Smithsonian Museum. So there's a ton of different kind of industries in which your anthropological research could be useful, and thinking about where it is you might want to apply will then help you think about what kind of skills would be most pertinent. Next slide, please. So this is a lot of text. I won't go through all this, but basically on this slide are two examples of resumes. The one on the left side of the slide is a resume that I already went through earlier. And on the right side, so the resume on the left side of the slide, the side I would say is basically a researcher, like kind of design research, user experience resume. And then on the right side, for contrast, I have a resume I used as a digital producer. And so just to very quickly highlight the differences, they look different in terms of, but they have my name at the top and they say my job title. They both have a summary, but they say different things. For example, the digital producer resume, which is a little bit different, says that I work as a project manager, digital producer, and podcaster with experience in narrative and audio storytelling. So I'm highlighting something else besides research in this case, because I'm trying to work in audio production. The experience then is the next thing that's different. So on this slide on the right, they both have summaries, but then whereas I focus on core skills like qualitative research, design, and project management on my research resume, on my producer resume, I focus on experience, such as digital production, producing podcasts, and I select some different podcasts that I've worked on the show. On my research resume, I show thought leadership. Again, these are the blog articles or publications I have that people can link to. And yet on the producer resume, those don't matter as much. So therefore, I'm highlighting grants and awards I've gotten for media production. So the idea is, this is just two examples to kind of point out that depending on what it is that you're applying for, who you're applying for, what kind of work you want to get, what you're going to highlight on your resume is going to be different. You will have a summary, but your core skills will be different. What your experience you're going to show will be different. If you have things like publications or grants and awards, they're different. You may use them at different times. Next slide, please. So the key thing there is like, that's just, it's, you're the same person, but there's just different ways of telling your story. So one thing I want to say is like, the point of this is not to say CVs don't matter. They actually are quite helpful. Even if you never plan to go into academia, CV is useful because it provides a running list of everything you've ever accomplished. So it's actually a really great way if you say, well, what was that paper or that conference or that time I worked with someone? Let me think about that. And so then your CV keeps all that, which is great because your resumes are going to change. And so I highly recommend, if you have not made a CV, it's worth doing again because you can just start listing everything that you've done. So it's actually a little bit easier than trying to tailor it the way a resume is. So that's all it for my slides. So thank you so much for listening. And I will now turn it over to Ingrid. And next slide.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be talking about applicant tracking systems today, so you know what they are, how they work, and how you can optimize your resume to really get the most success out of your applications. Next slide, please. Hello again. My name is Ingrid Ramón Parra. I'm a Latina with short dark hair. Today I'm wearing a white shirt. I'm here in my room. A tapestry is hanging here behind me. This is a look into my interior world. Next slide, please. Okay, so applicant tracking systems are also known as ATS for short. What are they? They are basically software systems. They're used in recruiting and hiring. They're meant to help employers primarily identify competitive candidates for specific job positions. What they do is they scan your materials, your resume or CV if the position asks for it, or cover letter, whatever materials they ask for. They scan them against job posting or certain keywords that the employer has identified are important. And this is all a digital step. No human is reviewing it yet, okay? Once you get ranked and it goes through the applicant tracking system, only then will it go to the hands of a hiring manager or HR. Now, the question is, how ubiquitous are these systems? The answer is very and increasingly so. So I think it's super safe to assume that when you're applying somewhere, there is some form of an applicant tracking system being used. So assume its use. Next slide, please. So a Career Arc survey in 2016 did a survey of companies that used applicant tracking systems. This is 4 years ago, so it's a little bit dated, but bear with me. And the results found that 62% of the companies using these systems admitted that qualified candidates were likely being automatically filtered out of the vetting process by mistake. That's not what the applicant tracking systems are supposed to do, but it was happening. So it is a bit of a flaw in the system. And what I want to share with you is something that I think was happening to me back in 2018 when I was on the job market. So can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. So this is my 2018 resume, and this is what not to do. This resume will not be shared with anyone in the webinar because it's not a good example, but I'm sharing it here. So here's a screenshot of what I had designed at the moment. My name is up on top, and you have some contact information to the right, like my name, my website, links to something I'd written, so on and so forth. Instead of objective, I had philosophy because I was a very bold young scholar, and I thought philosophy would make me stand out instead of using words like objective. And I also had projects instead of work experience. I had very tiny font, and I don't know if you can tell, those of you that are watching, I also had a typo in there. So I was really making a lot of amateurish mistakes, and especially after hearing Molly's resume presentation, I was really failing. I was just failing, even though I'd spent so much time on this resume, making it look a certain way, highlighting important words. As you can see, very wordy. It's just not a good example, but it's what I was actually using to apply to various positions. I did eventually catch the typo, so it wasn't that bad, but nonetheless, I was just not doing great when I was out there. Can I get the next slide, please? So what I wanted to show and share with you is basically a demo. We know that companies are using applicant tracking systems. So what can we do as applicants to ensure that we're having as much success as possible? Well, now we have tools called ATS Checkers. The one that I've used before, or the ones that I've used before, are jobscan.co and zipjob.com. There are many, many, many. This is, as you can probably guess, an emerging market. So there are many ATS checkers. I only wrote those down. I'm not an affiliate. I don't have a link or a discount. These are just the ones that I've used, and I can personally say they're good. So what I did is I took my 2018 resume and I found a position that was advertised recently that was a qualitative researcher position that I was extremely qualified for with my 2018 resume. And so I went ahead and ran it through one of these checkers. And here I found that really I was only matched as 21% qualified or desirable for this particular job description. And I included here on the right just a small screenshot of what these ATS checker reports look like. So here on the right, you'll see match rates. You have a pie chart with about 21% allocated. And it also tells me that I need to add more skills, and it's indicated by X on the report. That things that are missing. So this is just one little screenshot. So I'm 21%. That's bad. No one's ever gonna look at my resume. It's gonna fall through the digital cracks, and I'm not gonna get that call back. Can I get the next slide, please? So here is more, here is another screenshot, more detailed, of the ATS checker. So it gives you an overall match rate, 21%, not great, but then also tells you what are things that you can do. So in this screenshot, we have some of the findings, skills and keywords. I'm missing 4 important high-value skills on my resume that I probably do have. I'm just not using the right keywords. I'm also missing 15 other hard and soft skills, again, which I'm sure I have. I just didn't say it in a particular way. The job title match, of course, design anthropologist is not going to be something that comes up often. So none of my job titles matched any of the job description or what the employer wanted. It says that I got an education match, which I don't. So it's actually, my match is actually less than 21% because I don't yet have my doctorate, and the ATS checker didn't quite catch that. So the ATS checker is actually being nice to me at this point. Can I get the next slide, please? And it continues. One that I really especially like is this ATS tip, which you can see here. Sometimes different companies use different applicant tracking systems, and sometimes these checkers can identify exactly which one they use because they're all different. They use different algorithms and coding schemes. So sometimes you can even identify the one specific one with this one. It also highlights the section headings, my work history, professional experience. There's nothing about personal philosophy on there, so of course I'm not doing so great. They found education, so I got a green check mark. They're telling me that my file type is okay, it's a PDF, even though most systems prefer Word documents. And I do get a check because my name is concise and readable. It's like getting 10 points on a test, right? So as you can see, there's really a lot that I can fix. I'm only including these small portions of the report. The report is more extensive, but I just wanted to demo to you what you can do before you submit an application. Run your resume against these systems, copy and paste the job description from the company website, not from LinkedIn, Indeed, Google Jobs, but from the actual company website. Run it, make sure you have at least an 80% match, and then you can feel so much better about submitting it, knowing that you're gonna get ranked competitively against other applicants. So that's basically how these work. You can learn so much more about these applicant tracking systems, but now you know and are kind of better prepared to before you submit. And you can pretty much tailor every single resume to a different job description to get that high match rate. And I know it may seem a little bit dull to use some of the keywords or kind of verbs that are highlighted in the job description on your resume. It doesn't feel very inspired, but that's okay, because you can inspire people once you actually sit down face to face and talk to them. Then you can be yourself and you can wow them. But you won't be able to do that if your resume doesn't really match highly on these systems. So it's good to know that these tools exist. They're not always free. There's some trials, so just experiment with them, but definitely make use of them, because this is what we're up against in the modern day job market. So wish you a lot of luck, you guys. That's it. Oh, and I'm going to introduce the incomparable Dr. Elizabeth Briody.
Thank you, Ingrid. We are running a little bit late, and so I'm going to just briefly mention my 2 slides. So go to the next. One has to do with a bio, and I'm sure many of you have had to write bios. It's basically a short statement about your own professional background and your career. It can be used for many different purposes. Next slide. And my last slide is about narratives. A narrative is really a customized story. It's usually 1 page, it's on your letterhead, and it talks about your work very succinctly with examples. Next slide, please. I apologize for this, but we will not have time for a Q&A today. We do have 1 summary slide. Next slide, please. Dawn, would you like to do this?
Sure. This summary represents what all of the presenters have been saying today, their key takeaways. Pay attention to the job description. Focus on outcomes, dollars, percentages, numbers. When building an online resume, use key phrases in the job description. Use the entire space and character length given. Your resume is a business card. Your portfolio is your story. A CV is useful because it's a running list of your accomplishments. It helps you tailor your resume. Understand how applicant tracking systems work and optimize your resume to increase your chances of getting a job interview. When networking, you are in control of the process, as well as the materials you share with prospective employers and clients. Next slide, please.
So very briefly in closing here, you will all be emailed an evaluation of the webinar. We would appreciate your input. We have 1 more webinar to give next Thursday at the same time. You will be able to see postings of this webinar and the previous 2 on the AAA website. The last webinar is next week. It's called Facing the Interview Squad, and it will be led by Joe Aiken. And one other point is that the AAA is already looking into hosting a second career webinar series come this September. Next slide. So again, thank you so much for your attention. For those of you who have asked questions in the chat, we will be answering those questions, and those questions will be posted on the website. Just give us a couple of days to get to them. And thank you so much for your attendance.